I recently left the place I had once called home, stepping into a new chapter. My mother-in-law, ever the optimist, chirped over the phone. It must be so hard not having a home anymore. I could barely muster a response as she wished me well in my new place. Quietly, I replied, "Thank you, and please keep your distance from my home, especially considering you're getting a divorce." The line went silent before she quickly ended the call. Standing at the airport, I didn't feel anger, but a profound sense of relief, even triumph. I felt lighter, free, as I returned to a space that was truly my own. My name is Alice, my husband, Arthur, and I had been married only a short time when he was sent overseas for work, forcing us into a long-distance relationship. Before marriage, we had been together for 6 years, and the trust we built during that time kept me grounded during his absence. I never doubted his loyalty, my only concern was for his safety. Despite the distance, our lives had been calm, though loneliness would occasionally creep in. But everything changed when my mother-in-law moved in while Arthur was abroad. Her decision wasn't just a visit, it was a control tactic born of her own pain. She had been abandoned by my father-in-law, who disappeared after cheating on her, and now she feared the same fate might await me. Determined to prevent what she saw as inevitable, she took up residence in our home, declaring, "I'm going to keep an eye on you, Alice, make sure you don't stray." Her presence was like a weight on my chest, an unyielding pressure that grew unbearable with each passing day. Desperate, I reached out to Arthur for help, but no matter how many times he asked his mother to leave, she refused. "Arthur trusts you too much, Alice. You'll end up cheating," she would accuse, her words cutting deeper each time. No matter what I did, her suspicions never subsided. She doubted me at every turn, refusing to cook, using all the food I bought, never replacing it. When I came home to an empty fridge, I would voice my frustration, but she seemed indifferent. "I bet you're out having dinner with your boyfriend, since you're cheating," she would accuse, each remark a fresh blow. Even when I returned late from work, trying to quietly cook myself something, she would stir up a scene. "You must be cheating, coming home at this hour and leaving me here alone," she'd say. It felt like every moment of my life was under her scrutiny. Her accusations wore me down, until one day I could barely keep it together. "Please, I'm begging you, just leave. I'm not cheating. I love Arthur," I pleaded, but her response was always the same. She grew more entrenched in her beliefs. Arthur, caught between his work commitments and his mother's demands, tried his best to make her leave, but she only became more defiant. "So, you really want me gone? You must be cheating," she would say, as though that was the only explanation. At my wit's end, I decided to take a break and meet up with an old friend. I hoped for a brief escape, but of course, my mother-in-law suspected the worst. She followed me, stalking me from behind lamp posts and the corner of her house, trying to stay hidden. I ignored her, determined to get some peace. I met Sandra, a friend from college, at a cafe, and though my mother-in-law's antics were maddening, I refused to let them ruin this small moment of normalcy. I noticed sudden flashes of light, and when I turned, I saw my mother-in-law discreetly taking pictures of us. Sandra, clearly noticing the odd situation, raised an eyebrow and asked, "What's going on?" Ready to confront her directly, Sandra stood up, her body language assertive. "Should I say something to her?" she asked. I quickly grabbed her arm, urging her to stay put. "No, please don't," I said, hoping to defuse the situation. Sandra, with her pixie cut and androgynous style in trendy streetwear, had a unique charm. I joked, half seriously, that my mother-in-law might have mistaken Sandra for a man. The absurdity of the idea made Sandra burst into laughter, and for a moment, we both found the situation more humorous than frustrating. Sandra leaned in and pretended to hold my hand, further teasing my mother-in-law. Every time my mother-in-law clicked the camera, her excitement was evident. She'd snap photos with such fervor, her nostrils flaring as if she had uncovered some scandalous truth. It was so ridiculous that I couldn't help but join in the laughter. The whole situation turned into a strange, comedic spectacle. After enduring the bizarre behavior, I felt a wave of relief. Sandra and I spent the rest of the afternoon shopping, laughing about the absurdity of it all. When we finally parted ways, I knew what was coming. Sure enough, my mother-in-law followed me home, hiding behind lampposts and walls. Just like before, occasionally, I entertained myself by playing a game of red light, green light with her, watching her scramble to hide whenever I glanced back. It was almost too easy to outwit her, and the whole thing seemed so silly, as if she genuinely thought I hadn't noticed. When I arrived home and started to take off my shoes, she approached me, her face flushed with excitement, holding up a disposable camera like it was evidence from a crime scene. "Alice, I finally caught you. I've got proof of your cheating. I'm sending these to Arthur, so get ready," she said triumphantly. "Really? Good luck with that," I responded coolly, not at all concerned. Her excitement quickly turned to annoyance as she buzzed around me like a child with a tantrum. "Are you okay with this?" she pressed. "These photos are clear, your face and his are right there." She was convinced she had irrefutable evidence. I remained calm and repeated, "That's fine." Though it was unfortunate that Sandra's appearance sometimes led to confusion, Arthur knew her well from before our marriage, so, if my mother-in-law sent a photo of me with Sandra to him, He'd immediately recognize her as a close friend, not someone to be concerned about. Despite my mother-in-law's antics, I had to prepare for a business trip abroad. I was disappointed not to be seeing Arthur, especially since he was in another country, but the trip was necessary. I informed my mother-in-law of my travel plans, making it clear I wasn't asking for her opinion. To her, however, my trip seemed like a romantic getaway. As I was packing, she smirked and said, "It'll be a real problem if you come back pregnant from your business trip. Arthur hasn't seen you in a while, so pretending the baby's his won't be easy." Her insinuations were so crass I didn't even bother to argue. I just brushed her off. "Yeah, it's just a business trip, not a romantic getaway," I said, and left without another word. The trip was exhausting, and the days blurred by. When I finally returned to the U.S., I was beyond tired, and so was my boss, who had accompanied me. I decided to pick up some duty-free sweets before heading home and took a moment to rest on a bench. That's when my phone rang. It was Sandra, and her voice was full of surprise. "Hey, Alice, welcome back. You won't believe this, your mother-in-law showed up at the company where I work." I was stunned. Sandra's workplace wasn't the kind of place someone just drops by uninvited. Hearing that my mother-in-law had gone to such lengths to track her down was both frustrating. I corrected her calmly. It wasn't an affair trip, and I didn't exactly enjoy it. It was a work trip. Her tone remained smug. "Well, I've already sent Arthur the evidence photos," she announced triumphantly. I let out a disinterested which seemed to satisfy her, though she didn't notice my lack of concern and continued talking. "By the way, I moved. Your old house isn't even there anymore. I sold it. I guess you must be struggling without anywhere to go back to, huh? But don't worry, hang in there," she said cheerfully. Again, I responded with a flat as she laughed, oblivious to my growing detachment. "Enjoy your life in your new house," she added, almost too cheerfully. "Thank you, and please never come back to our house. After all, you're going to be divorced soon," I replied coolly, ending the conversation. After she hung up, I lingered in the airport for a moment, but instead of anger, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief, a quiet triumph. I allowed myself a small fist pump, feeling lighter as I began my journey home. It was strange. I was returning to the house my mother-in-law claimed to have sold. Maybe she had even taken some of the furniture, but honestly, whatever was missing felt like a gift. The weight of the situation had lifted, and I was ready to move forward with a clear mind. I immediately called a locksmith to change the front door lock, ensuring my mother-in-law couldn't gain access to the house again. With that done, I sprawled out on the living room floor, savoring the freedom of having the entire space to myself. In a burst of joy, I raised my fist in the air and shouted, "I did it!" The next day, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law, and her voice was shaky, almost frantic. "Alice, something's gone terribly wrong," she blurted. Unable to resist, I asked with a hint of sarcasm, "What's wrong?" "I thought I sold the house, but it turns out I didn't. I borrowed money without realizing it, and now debt collectors are coming after me. It's terrifying," she stammered. I feigned concern, though I could barely hold back a smile. "That sounds awful," I said, masking the satisfaction in my voice. It turned out that the company she had mistakenly visited, thinking it was Sandra's family business, wasn't a real estate firm at all. It was actually a shady operation masquerading as one but was deeply involved in loan sharking. Sandra had warned me about the company. They'd repeatedly told her that the house couldn't be sold, as it was in Arthur's name, and my mother-in-law had no legal right to sell it. Desperate and rejected by legitimate agencies, she had ended up at the place owned by Sandra's parents, where she was tricked into signing a promissory note without fully understanding the implications. The document bound her to a crippling debt, with a repayment schedule of $1,500 per day. She had somehow scraped together just enough to keep the collectors at bay for the time being, but the situation was clearly unsustainable. Tears in her voice, she called me again. "Please, Alice, you have to help me. The debt collectors have been here since dawn, and I don't know what to do anymore." Her desperation was palpable. "It's terrifying. I can't sleep. I don't have any savings left, and I spent all the borrowed money buying a new house. Please, you have to help." Her next request was so outrageous, I almost couldn't believe my ears. "Could you please transfer $21,000 to my account every week until I've paid off this debt?" she pleaded, as if that was a reasonable solution. I was taken aback for a moment, but I quickly responded, trying to remain calm. "Honestly, do you think that's possible? Even if we combine Arthur's and your incomes, there's no way we could pay that much every week," I said sympathetically but firmly. "I'm sorry, but your only option is to work hard and earn it yourself. Is there any job out there where you could make $1,500 a day?" I half-joked, trying to lighten the absurdity of the situation. "Why not talk to the company you borrowed from? Maybe they can help you find a good job," I suggested. She sounded confused but hopeful. "Really? You think so? I'll go see them right away," she said, ending the call quickly. I sighed, knowing there was no stopping her now. Later, Sandra updated me, explaining that my mother-in-law had indeed shown up at the company, pleading, "I have no choice but to work, I need a job that pays more than $1,500 a day." Sandra and her team managed to find a job for her, but it was far from what she had imagined. The place was rough, a company where workers lived in dilapidated dormitories and labored in physically demanding conditions day and night. Even elderly employees were pushed to their limits. It wasn't the easy money she had hoped for, but at least for now, it would help her avoid the debt collectors. My mother-in-law had fallen into a grueling routine at her new job, working to the brink of exhaustion. The dormitories where employees stayed were enclosed by barbed wire, giving the place a bleak, prison-like appearance. Workers were blindfolded and transported to and from their shifts in vans, unable to know their exact location. "She'll be free once she pays off the debt, if that day ever comes," Sandra remarked wryly. Though Sandra was a dear friend, I couldn't shake the unease I felt for my mother-in-law, trapped in such harsh conditions. Weeks passed, and my mother-in-law's new life continued in its grim cycle. Then, Arthur's overseas assignment came to an end, and he finally returned home. I took the opportunity to fill him in on everything that had happened. Arthur listened quietly, then shrugged. "There's nothing we can do about my mom. All we can do is wish her well from a distance." It was clear that Arthur had never been particularly close to his mother. He'd tolerated her over the years, out of familial duty, but her constant suspicion and interference, especially towards me, had worn him thin. When I asked Arthur about the supposed evidence, photos of my alleged infidelity, he seemed almost surprised, as though he'd forgotten. He casually pulled a picture from his bag and showed it to me. "That's Sandra, right?" he said, bewildered. "I have no idea why my mom thought this was proof of infidelity. We had a huge argument over the phone about it. I told her